Hello, everyone. And we're here to talk about something that's really, really important and I think affects people in the cybersecurity industry a sort of almost disproportionate amount, actually, in comparison to others. And one of the things that I have found in my working life, so I run crisis simulations for companies where we simulate a cyber attack, and the board, the gold team, the silver team have to work out how they're going to handle that. And almost every single report I write, the issues that get raised are usually communication, poor inability to communicate, especially when the pressure starts building up, inability to delegate effectively, inability to lead teams, especially if those teams are virtual and not all in the same room. How do we communicate? How do we translate complex issues and portray them to people who perhaps aren't technical experts? How do we make decisions quickly? How do we facilitate people in our teams to make good decisions and quick decisions? And this all comes down to resilience, essentially. It's all about resilience. It's all about us as human beings being able to be high-performing individuals, being able to build high-performing teams. And thankfully, we've got someone here today who is an expert in this entire area and the author and creator of Roar, which is just a name that I absolutely love because I think the name in itself is empowering. So welcome, Marelise. Tell us, how did Roar come about being? What's the sort of story behind that?
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, hi everybody. I'm Marelise de Villiers. I'm the author and founder and CEO of Roar Coaching and Consulting. So I work in cybersecurity. I've worked in cybersecurity for the last 10 years and it's been a journey. I found myself in a very successful job in 2017 as a director in my company. But unfortunately, a toxic environment, a very toxic environment, being bullied by my boss, and reached the point of burnout and made the tough decision to walk away from a very successful 20-year career. So I found myself at a place where I was successful in a job, but not happy or healthy or being very successful in my relationships. And I started essentially my journey to build myself back up, to build my resilience back up. And in the process, in the last 4 years, I have really come to learn how important it is to strengthen my resilience muscle every day. And in my world, that means, you know, really prioritizing me on my list of priorities.
So before I move on and speak to Ian, because I've got loads of questions that I want to ask him as well. So do you sort of see this then as kind of akin in a way to sort of CPD and like how we would perhaps think about upskilling ourselves on a technical aspect, that this is equally as important as that?
It is professional development, and I think absolutely becoming more and more important. I recently did a keynote at the CISO 360 event, which was one of the very first ones we did in person. And the whole theme of the event was the cybersecurity as a resilient business asset. And I was like, but what about the cybersecurity leader as a resilient business asset? And of course, the leader, we know these days, in order to be incredibly influential, in terms of having that seat at the table, you really, really have to be an amazing communicator. And in order to do that, you've got to really show up as your best self. And that means really prioritizing your well-being. And so a big component of the Raw blueprint is around winning your inner game. So mastering your mindset, but also winning your outer game, which is all about your words and your actions and how you show up and really make that difference that you're there to make.
Yeah, and I think that brings us nicely on to Ian. I have a couple of questions. So obviously, Ian, part of the problem in our industry is burnout. We know that. We talk about it a lot. So I want to find out sort of what's Cyjax getting involved in here? How are you helping and contributing to this? And what do you think the problem is in cybersecurity and in the industry with resilience in within ourselves?
Those are two absolutely great sort of areas to explore. And I think what's really interesting is just coming together at a time where organizations are nearly living in a perpetual state of crisis and stress. We have a huge attraction and retention issue within cybersecurity now. And then finally, in terms of executive level communication between executives. I mean, you called it out in your initial introduction, really about how things break down in an organization when there's a major sort of event, a security event or crisis. And those relationships that you have with the other parts of the business then become strategic for that business's survival. So from my perspective as an intelligence guy, I know that a company is going to probably have a security event pretty soon. I know that their leadership is probably stressed out. It's not too hard to look into that crystal ball and say, listen, we can make a real difference in terms of the health and wellness of our employees when our leaders are healthy and they're coming at this from a place of compassion, and they're essentially making sure that they're bringing their best selves out there and willing to not be so kind of narrowly focused and look at the broader picture and take into consideration the emotional awareness to understand their own state so that they can treat each others with respect, with compassion. Because I think when I've seen organizations struggle in breach response, there is a torrent of information coming in, and the leadership of the IT department, the security team, the public relations, even the general counsel, the CEO is struggling to understand what has happened, what the magnitude of the issue is. And if the leadership of security or IT is only focused on the technical aspects and doesn't understand that their organization is in a state of crisis, then they can say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And that could be devastating for their career. It could also be devastating for the members of their team. So Cyjax is here to support the award-winning Marylise, and I wanted to say that. And I've been dying to say that for a long time, because we think that one of the biggest problems in cybersecurity today is not having a broad enough view of the strategic consequences. Sure, you can get through an issue by, tactically going forward. But unless you're emotionally aware, unless you're in the right headspace, you can do a lot of damage to your brand, your customers, your business partners, and certainly to your own team.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So I want to just touch on, we'll get into sort of when the workshop is and how people can sign up, because I think it's really important that people do that. But what do you think people are going to get out of the workshop? What do you think the main kind of takeaways are going to be?
For me, I'm hoping that it opens the doors of the possibility that day after day, they can survive, thrive, and not become demoralized with their lot in life. And, as Marylise said, she was miserable for almost 20 years and then said, you know what, I've had enough. So my hope is that people get that support, encouragement to make a good decision about themselves, in hopes that their courage, that they can find that strength to stop, being in, sadly, that cycle of crisis and, angry responses and defensiveness, which are just completely destructive to, personal relationships. I mean, I've written a bit on this subject, not at the same level as Marylise at all, but I think we've all struggled when that depression hits, to find, the opportunity to get away from it and get out of that moment, and try to make sure that we can emphasize with other people that might be feeling those same things.
And I think for me, I've sometimes felt that I've gone into like a reactive mode, and things affect me, people affect me, their comments affect me, or their lack of comments, or whatever it is. And it impacts me, and that impacts my day, which impacts my focus, which impacts my productivity, and everything kind of goes into this reactive snowball almost effect. And then conversely, you have some days where you're really proactive and you're really, you're focused, you're hitting goals, you're really motivated, you feel amazing. And I think for me, what would be so valuable is to be able to make sure, or to shift myself into that mode and away from this reactive mode that is always negative, it's always spiraling. Marylise, what's the kind of takeaway from that?
Absolutely. So that's why this is very much centered in my high performance work. So I'm a high performance coach, and we very much look at the habits. We work with our clients to really look at the habits shown by the world's most successful people. And it is, you know, you mentioned productivity, you mentioned energy management, psychology mastery, physiology mastery, you know, being really clear, having clarity on your purpose and your, you know, who you are and who you want to be. So it's being that high performer, and it's high performance is not just a once-off short-term thing. It's the ability to perform over long periods of time and having sustained levels of performance over long periods of time. And that means that you've got to really be, as you say, Lisa, proactive in terms of how you manage your own health and well-being, but also how you stay really, really crystal clear on, you know, what's the mission, what's the calling here, and why is this important to me?
So I'm really excited about this workshop. And as many of you will not know, Marilise has actually done some coaching sessions with me. And typically I've always been this sort of person who dismissed coaching. And I was completely forward with you about that and transparent with you. And I was always skeptical about it. And felt that, you know, perhaps I didn't need it. I had it all sorted. I very quickly realized that was not the case in my first session with Marilise. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, oh no, I'm fine, I'm moving on, I'm, you know, going from day to day, I can assure you that actually you do get stuff out of it, and it is definitely worth giving it a try. So if people want to sign up, how do they sign up? When is this happening? How can people kind of find out more about it?
So the workshop is soon, and we will include the link with more information in the link down below, below this video. But essentially there are two workshops. So the first one is on the 24th of November in the afternoon, 3 till 5 p.m. and we're actually doing it in person, so in at 20 East Cheap. So that's in Cyjax's offices, and we have space for 10 people, so there are still a few spaces left for the 24th of November session. So please give us a shout. You can just contact me, or you can complete the registration form on their website, and then we will be running a second session on the 1st of December. So the same thing, 3 till 5, and still have some spaces left. So yeah, it'd be lovely if you can join us. It's going to be great
Brilliant.
fun.
Thank you so much, Marilise, for talking to me, and to Ian as well. Always a pleasure, both of you. Thank you, everyone.